Welcome everyone to the University of Arizona Museum of Art's first 2021-2022 At the Table Speaker Series. My name is Chelsea Farrar and I am the Curator of Community Engagement here at the U of A Museum of Art. And again, thank you everyone so much for being here today. But before we begin, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and the Indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. And at the institutional level, we must be proactive in broadening awareness throughout campus and beyond to ensure our students and community members feel represented and valued. In this virtual format, I know that many of our guests are joining us here today from across the United States. Some of you have put in where you're joining us from, and I encourage you to learn what Indigenous lands you inhabit. So again, thank you again. If you're just joining us and you want to put in the chat where you're joining us from, and even if you know, what Indigenous lands you inhabit, you can add that to the chat as well. I also want to offer a brief labor acknowledgement. Willa Alschweid, our museum's Assistant Curator of Education, is here helping us with tech support during our virtual talk today. Thank you so much, Willa. And we're just so excited to be back this season to offer really an incredible lineup of programs and events. And to kick us off, we're excited to welcome back Dr. Carissa DiCindio and Dr. Yumi Shirai. And this season, we're back with even more virtual art trivia, workshops, and a full interdisciplinary speaker series highlighting the art of food. And some of those you can see here on your screen. And of course, these events this season are all in conjunction with an exceptional exhibition that we cannot wait to invite you all to, The Art of Food, from the collection of Jordan D. Snitcher and his family foundation. This exhibition opens October 24th and is curated by the museum's curator, Olivia Miller. And this exhibition features more than 100 works of art fitting for a UNESCO city of gastronomy, Tucson being the first. And it showcases how some of the most prominent artists of the 20th and 21st century have considered the most universal topic, food. This exhibition will open in person, like I said, on October 24th. We've been closed for over a year and a half, so we're really excited to actually be open in person, see people and works of art in 3D. And to celebrate this incredible occasion of opening in person, we are opening on October 24th with a community day, which is a free day full of art and food inspired programming, where we're welcoming a lot of community partners and friends to be a part of that. So a lot of hands-on experiences. So we hope that many of you can join us that day. And again, all year, our At the Table speaker series will feature interdisciplinary artists and scholars in conjunction with this exhibition, The Art of Food. We have a mix of in-person and virtual as we are carefully and gradually transitioning back to our home base on campus. And next month, Dr. Yuella Jacobs will return to the museum virtually to talk about the sexual politics of food. That will be an absolutely fantastic conversation and lecture. And to find out more and to register for our At the Table series and all of our other upcoming events, including virtual art trivia this Friday, please visit our website. These programs are all free thanks to the incredible support of the Jordan D. Snitcher and his family foundation, donors, and other museum members. And if you're a member of the museum and you're joining us today, thank you so much and welcome. If you're not yet a member, please consider joining. A link will be added to the chat and you can learn more about the benefits of joining. And just a little nudge that we have some really exciting member-only events coming up this fall, including some member-only talks, curator-led gallery tours of our exhibition, tours of local gardens and farms. And of course, as a member, you know that you are making the arts more accessible to students and community members through programs such as this, and providing life-changing engagements with the arts. All right, so really quickly before we get started, just a little housekeeping. Again, this is a webinar format. So if you saw our other online talks, virtual talks, again, it looks a little bit differently, but you can still engage with us. And our speakers today have stressed to me that they really want everyone directly engaging with the conversation. So you can interrupt, so to speak, put a question in the Q&A, and I'll see that in the Q&A section at the bottom of your window. You'll see that, and I'll interrupt our speakers and ask the question that you have. All right, so let me introduce our incredible speakers today that we're really lucky that we have back at the museum. It's an absolute honor to introduce these two incredible scholars, educators, and community expert gurus. I don't know what else to say. So Dr. Carissa DiCindio is Assistant Professor, Art and Visual Culture Education at the University of Arizona. Prior to this position, she was the Curator of Education at the Georgia Museum of Art. She has been in the field of museum education for over 17 years. Her research focused on peer learning in museums and working with university museum audiences. Her work relies heavily on collaborative relationships with community partners and art museum educators that connect to research, experiential learning, opportunities for students, and service that benefits the community and the field. And Dr. Yumi Shirai is an assistant professor of the Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities within the Department of Family and Community Medicine, and an affiliate faculty for the Applied Intercultural Arts Research Graduate Interdisciplinary Program at the University of Arizona. She holds her MA in Theater and Dance and a PhD in Family Studies and Human Development from the UA. Her research and outreach program focuses on promoting the quality of life in individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, or IDD, throughout their lifespan. Specifically, her interests are applying asset-based lifespan development and social cognitive frameworks by integrating creativity and expressive arts and community-based outreach and research projects. Her current projects include Project Together, an expressive art-based bereavement support curriculum for adults with IDD, Artworks, an art studio and gallery by artists with IDD, I Adapt, Identity and Address Alzheimer's and Dementia in adults with IDD through prevention and training projects, and Creativity Pathways to Belonging, an affiliated project of the Creative Arts Interest Network of the American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, where she serves as the chair. Thank you both so much for being here, and I hand it over to you both.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Willa. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So thank you for joining us today. Chelsea said my name is Carissa. I teach art museum education classes at U of A. And in the spring semester, I teach theory and practice in art museum education, which is a class for undergrads. And then I teach another class for graduate students, where we're really focused on museum teaching and gallery teaching in years that there's not a pandemic. We usually meet at the University of Arizona Museum of Art in their classroom and spend, class in the galleries teaching and practicing on each other and experimenting. And so it was really exciting to get to start on this project virtually and still get to work with UAMA.
Thank you very much for the introduction and the collaboration. We are very excited to be part of this project. And can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. It's very funny to not see the audience in the screen and I get nervous. Okay, so Chelsea introduced me very nicely and I had a long introduction, so I would not go on, but this is the second collaboration with Dr. DiCindio and UAMA, and we are very excited about this collaboration because we actually going to have an art exhibition that's coming up in the part of the food exhibition. And it's nice to extend our network in the community through this project. And we feel really very blessed to have this network and collaboration. Thank you.
Thanks, Yumi. So today we're going to talk about the project that we worked on together, creating an art exhibition called Acts of Love and Community, sharing experiences with food and art. We'll talk about the two groups of artists who came together, students from the class that I was teaching, and then artists from Artworks, and our collaboration with UAMA as a site for this type of project. We'll talk about the project process and the outcomes and end with a conclusion. So for this project, we wanted to make sure that the students and the artists got chances to collaborate together to create the exhibition on food and food-related issues at UAMA. That was partly inspired by the exhibition that we knew was going to be up this year. And so that definitely had a big role in our decision. But the other role was that we were really looking for a theme and a way to connect people during a time when they were very isolated during the pandemic. My class was meeting online. A lot of classes at UAMA were, or I'm sorry, U of A were meeting online. And all of the artists weren't back at Artworks last spring. So we wanted to find something that was serving as a way to make those types of connection. And so this project really centered on the idea of caring relation and well-being. And so if you look at Noel Nodding's work, it's focused on the relation of caring between people and establishing a climate of care as an underlying current to all other actions. It relies on the act of listening to build care and trust. We also, or at least for me, it was something that was kind of in the back of my mind the whole semester. My grad class was working with the book called The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. And it looks at gathering as something that has purpose and can create community. And so instead of looking at the task of gathering or the theme of why you're coming together, looking at what that true purpose is. And so we wanted to think about deeper reasons about why we were gathering and crafting a purpose while we were meeting for this project. So in this case, the class was collaborating with Artworks and we were creating an exhibition together, but we did this because we wanted opportunities for the students and the artists to make connections with each other through this shared experience of food during an isolating time. And this project has been made possible by donors for the College of Fine Arts, the Fine Arts Fund for Excellence, Bob and Mary Paulin Endowment, and the Joseph Rossi Jr. Endowment. So one of the motivating factors for this project was that the University of Arizona came out with a report called Student Mental Health and Wellbeing During COVID-19. And so it was really looking at how students were responding to the pandemic and being in school during that time. And so that came out earlier in the pandemic. I believe it was spring of 2020. Time has no meaning anymore for me. I've been in this void. But they found that U of A students were experiencing substantial mental health effects from COVID-19. 66% of students reported that their mental health had worsened during the pandemic, and 1 in 6 said it had significantly worsened. 37% of students who said that their mental well-being worsened due to COVID-19 had to make changes to their academic plans. And self-care had been challenging during quarantine, especially maintaining a routine and getting enough physical activity. And so that was something that was a motivating factor for thinking about this project and how to frame this project. And so, as we said, there were partners in this collaboration. My class is an undergraduate course in art and visual culture education, Artworks, art studio and gallery by adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities on the University of Arizona campus, and UAMA, and specifically getting to work with Chelsea and Willa and their community gallery. So class preparation for this project. The students prepared for this project first by thinking about the role of art museum educators. And so this class included in every year, experiential learning opportunities. So students could really see gallery teaching and teaching in museums and programming in museums from the perspective of doing it. And so that included working with community partners. Most of the students this past spring had backgrounds in art education and art history, but there were also students from other fields, especially studio art this time. Prior to working on this project, the students were focused on ways to make art museums accessible to wider audiences, looking at participatory practices, how visitors can be engaged in exhibitions by participating in them instead of just viewing them. And then also looking at how to bring multiple voices into those galleries and experiences, how to incorporate community voices, how to not make things for people, but with them. And so the students were introduced to this project at the beginning of the semester, and some expressed that they weren't quite sure what to expect from what exactly we were getting them into.
So the other participant is the Artworks. We are an outreach program at the UA Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities within the Department of Family and Community Medicine. And we do have on-campus presence, but not necessarily we have a large interaction with other departments rather than we holding this project. And then also we have other partners, but the museum and the Department of Fine Arts are the biggest partner. And I will introduce, if you can slide to the next. Thank you. So before I go into our project and our program, we talk about intellectual disability a bit because that really advantage using the art, the advantage of using art. This particular population able them to really equally communicate with other group of people. And that is what we promote through Artworks program. And what is intellectual disability? And that is characterized by significant limitation in both intellectual functioning and adaptive behaviors. So which include executive functioning, like thinking and problem solving skills, making relationship with others. So reading the cues from others so you can make friends, or someone is not feeling well, then you can identify. And those skills or other day-to-day activities, like in the caregiving field, we say activities of daily living. So dressing, eating, exercising, bathing, those kind of stuff. So those need some kind of support from others or cues. And those condition is originated before the age 18. And it is a part of larger developmental disabilities, and which is a lifelong condition. So throughout the life, even beyond the school age, they need some kind of support and assistance. Slide forward, please. So who are those people and how many of them are in the community? So this is an estimated number that based on the this data, it's a national data based on the Medicaid and Medicare support use, but 7.37 million people lives with the condition of intellectual or developmental disabilities in the community. But of those, only 20% receive service from the federal or state. So which means many of them are living in the community, and which is very surprising, but not surprising in a way that many of us encounter people with intellectual or developmental disability in our day-to-day life. We may not realize they are part of those communities. Please, next. So of those 20% who receive some support, and this is from another data, 70%, about close to 70% of them are living with the family member or family home. And only 16% living alone or with roommate, and 13% are supervised setting, such as group homes or developmental homes or larger facility of some medical facilities. So think of this population and our general population aging together. So used to be people with disability may not live longer than parents' age, but nowadays they are living as long as general population. So it becomes a little bit more awareness that require for the community partners to how long they live in the community after high school and in the typical community setting. Please, next. So for people with IDD after high school, some people may go to continuing education in higher education and gain different skills, or they may gain employment to have a job, or maybe they go to vocational training, those are funded. So training to gain some paid employment, or day program like ours that practice life skills and social skills. And also they may have other community home-based services such as the residential support, therapies and attendant care and rehabilitation and recipes and other leisure activities. So think about people with disabilities after high school, how much of control they have to work in the community setting or interact with the community. So they may be limited because they need to have support from the transportation, family member to take you to the place to place. So having this opportunity through arts are really key for our members, at least, to really have the shared experience with the other population or other groups. Please, next. So for our studio, we promote the mutual learning through creative and expressive arts in interaction between our artists and the university students. So we have art studio and gallery. And in the gallery space, we promote the vocational skills so they can earn the funding to, they can earn their wage by sales. And then also we have professional developmental skills to be artists or art exhibitors or community advocate. And also we do have a student collaborative, like working with Carissa's course students. And also we do work with the medical students or residents and other students from the university. Next.
So the goals of this project included having opportunities to build mutual communication and understanding between the students and the artists with IDD, creating an exhibition through a collaboration that was focused on connection, nourishment, and care, and gaining experience developing content for a museum exhibition using participatory and multivocal practices. And so the project was really focused on that care and connection aspect, like I mentioned, and that was really kind of what held it all together and it's kind of like the core of it. And so in terms of the projects that they created and the activities that we did in class, we were focused a lot on giving them time to talk to each other, working together, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that looked like in a few minutes. At the same time, the University of Arizona Museum of Art was such a specific place for this, and that was something that I was nervous about being online this year. This last spring was the first spring where we didn't have any in-person museum experiences together for those classes. The year before that, we had started in person and then had shifted online. And so that year we could draw on those past experiences in terms of, thinking about how we were teaching in the gallery, thinking about what those spaces looked like, thinking about sound and movement in those spaces. But this past year, we started out in these little boxes and we ended up in these little boxes. And so it really was something that I was just very nervous about. But, working with a collaboration, getting to know the museum, looking at different ways that museums do virtual programming, especially during the pandemic, and how they were offering so much more, really across the board. museums were, but also UAMA was just, really offering such wonderful programs that it gave us a lot to draw from without even having those physical experiences. And so it really taught us more about how UAMA collaborates with the community, online, how they could still create this type of program, thinking in the future about what a physical exhibition might look like. At the beginning of the semester, we weren't even sure if it would be physical, if it would be a virtual exhibition. So, the idea that something physical was going to happen was generating excitement, at least for me, was generating tons of excitement.
Yeah, so the participants, we have 13 students from Carissa's course and 16 artists from our artists, and age from 24 to 70. So we have a wide range of ages in our artists. And the format is we met each other virtually via Zoom, like you are so familiar with Zoom throughout the pandemic. And I think I want to say the advantage of this, because Artworks artists, although they have some communication and other technical access limitations, we have practiced Zoom over the year before this project started. So that was our strength, that majority of artists who are on the Zoom, they are comfortable. And one of them are on the Zoom together tonight, and he needs to go at 5:40. So we're gonna bring him in beforehand. But anyways, so we met together weekly for 7 weeks for 30 minutes. And we have a short conversation as a whole. Then we break into breakout rooms with the 4 different studios with undergraduate students joining to their groups. So each worked on their own works of art outside of the weekly groups. So after they have the discussion, they went back to their own studio or own home to create some art pieces. And Carissa had an additional discussion with the artists from the art course afterwards. Next. So this is the 7-week kind of topics. So the introduction for the first day, shared favorite food, and tangible example of art related to food. So students shared example of food art they found online. And some of artists made some of the arts with their food items as well to share online. And relationship between food and feelings and memories. So a lot of memory kind of coming from their culture, family, but they shared those within the small group. And as they do that, they did the concept mapping to talk about those abstract thoughts, how they connect and relate to each other. So that's the kind of backdrop for the following week, that they brainstormed as a collective group in each studios. They had 4 studios. What would be the collective theme from that group? So they discussed that in the following week. And they created rough drafts of topics, and they sketched ideas. And Artworks people are very familiar with sketching and practicing a lot. So they can make a really fantastic art for the show. And the preparation of work of art, and they wrap up the group before art making. So they actually went through their ideas of what kind of art they're going to make, and the backstory of why and why it is important to that particular person, and their idea of what materials or what medias they use to create their own art. So they shared that in the group as well. And they took about 3-week or 4-week break. Then they went to their own studio space or back home to create those art based on their discussion and plans. And they came back together to share what they have created. And the last week, seeing those art of works from everybody, they planned the exhibition, what they're going to do, or how we can make this exhibition as a participatory kind of practice. So they had a bigger vision of each of the created art to how we can collectively present in the museum space and connect with the community. Next.
I totally forgot that I had made a lunch. Oh, I don't know if you can see it. There. Hang on, I'm gonna.
Because of your screen, right?
Yeah, it's hard to see, but I made my own food art. It's a face. It has strawberries for eyes. It's not interesting enough to go through closing all this out to to make my screen less blurry. But we really were encouraging that option to experiment and play. And so playing with your food seems like the ultimate in play to me.
Yeah, that was an interesting kind of interaction as well, because artists, they started making lunch food art on their kind of lunch trays, and they shared those with the people in the group. And then students coming back with their own kind of, art on their phone. So that was very fun to see. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. So, so the students from spring of 2020 who shifted online, we had planned a project where they would be making art as well. When we went online quickly after spring break, we weren't able to really finish the project the way we had planned. The students we were meeting asynchronously. Our times didn't match up with Artworks times for meetings. And I also found that, it varied where students were living and what materials they would have. Some were studio majors and some were practicing artists and had lots of materials, and other students didn't. And so, for that semester, it was fine. We used nature for art and found objects. But going into it this past spring, I really wanted to be able to offer supplies for students so that they weren't thinking, they weren't going into nature and gathering art supplies. That they were instead, able to create what they wanted to create. And so I received a small grant from the College of Fine Arts to purchase supplies for students in terms of art supplies, but then also groceries so that they could make some of the food that they talked about in their groups. Because like I said, we were trying to center on care. And so we really wanted to, have that nourishment component in it. And, talking about food for so long, it felt like we should also give everybody a chance to make the food they wanted. And so students provided me with grocery lists. Some did, some didn't. But I purchased the food and either got it delivered to them or they would pick it up somewhere and then they were able to make whatever they chose to make. And so it varied greatly between one student made paella because that was talked about a lot. Another student made boca burgers, and you'll see why in a few minutes. One did Kraft macaroni and cheese and cut up hot dogs. And so, it was another way to connect and it was another way to have those conversations. Yumi, since it's 5:35, why don't we skip ahead to Joey's slide? Yeah, and then we can come back. So here's Cody's Boca Burger. That I made Boca Burgers too, because we talked so much about Boca Burgers.
So while Joey's joining us, so the Cody's Boca Burger is he sketched out his Boca Burger because his family practicing to eat healthy. So he understands that the Boca Burger is based on the vegetable-based proteins. So he feels really, contributing to the family and try to be healthy as a whole unit, as a family. And he sketched out and used magazines to get those specific colors. Oh, Joey, you are here?
Hi, Joey.
Yumi, I don't see mine green, nothing yet.
Yeah, I don't see a screen, but you want to talk about it? Because do you see a picture in the middle? Oops, that was your microphone. Oh, Yeah, yes, he is here.
Hi, Yumi.
Hi, Joey. So you want to say hi to everyone?
Hi.
We have about 28 people on the Zoom. So Joey is a artist for the middle piece. You want to talk about this middle piece?
Yeah, like a Diane helped me. Like a so like a say Yumi.
Okay, so Diana is his studio teacher. So he drafted his picture first, but then first of all, who is this pretty lady with the long hair?
Like my mom.
Okay, so who is the other person with the black
Like
shirt?
me.
Okay, so what's flying in the air?
Like a hamburger. Like my mom got like a dove.
Yeah, over the stove. She's throwing a hamburger over the stove to your plate, right? So that's the picture.
Yeah.
So he drew those pictures on a paper and carefully traced on the fabric. So he selected fabric, and Diana, his studio teacher, helped him to select and help him to cut carefully. And she assisted you to stitch it, but you stitched on your own. Is it correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he loves hamburger, and especially the one made by his mom. So that is the theme. And we have 3 hamburgers from Artworks slides. And anything else you want to share, Joey? How did you like to talk to the students together in the Zoom?
No, I love it.
You love it? What kind of things did you talk to them?
With them, her saying something, I don't know what her name, nothing Yumi.
All right, so Joey, you may not see the things, but everybody is praising your artwork. Joey, you are amazing artist. I love all of the patterns, fabrics you used. And so many comments, Joey, you are famous. So for when we have a show opening at the UAMA on October 24th, I am sure you get to meet Joey. And Joey is a very socially busy gentleman. So you're going to go back to your own activity afterwards?
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, Joey.
Bye.
So I went through our pieces, but you want to go back to your, yeah.
Well, I'll go back to this slide. So these are some of the students' reflections from the project that we gathered afterwards, and we'll revisit some more of them later. But this was really looking at the ways that the project, how it fit into their understandings of art museum education and just that experience of the collaboration. So they talk about thinking about food and art in different ways, how it was less about being serious and being this like a artist who's alone and making art, and how it can be a more collaborative process, how it can help them to kind of break out of that seriousness and create. For the one at the bottom says simply for this, creating for the sake of creating, and then seeing their artworks peers, how it influenced their art, and looking at how they thought about food in the community and how they were able to kind of make those connections from this process. And so we have Marissa here, and I think instead of me talking about Marissa's work, we should go ahead and bring her in. Chelsea, if you can do that. Hi, Marissa. I see your name there.
Hi, sorry. I was trying to figure out, I had to rejoin the meeting.
I know. Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Oh, could you talk a little bit about your work, Comfort and Food?
Oh, okay. So our group focused more on the aspect of good memories attached to food. So I always had during Christmas times, my family would make tamales, and so I decided to do an India ink drawing of the process of doing tamales. I think the experience is really, really fun. I never really thought about the connections between community and food before, and I really did enjoy sharing different recipes and stories with the other people in our group.
Thank you. Do you mind sticking around? Then you can answer questions with us. Don't go anywhere. I also wanted to share Adriel's work. He made his own watercolors, and he did that independent of this project. He had just joined the class with watercolors that he had created. And so for this one, he used ash and charcoal from his family's fire pit, and then pigments and the skins from a dried poblano pepper that he processed to make watercolor paint. And so it was something that he was interested in. So you can see the little watercolors in an Altoids tin there. And so for this one, he created a visual recipe of his mom's favorite caldo. Caldo jalapeño is his favorite dish for his dad to make. His mother says that it reminds her of her childhood, and the smell fills up the whole house. He says that the whole family ends up in the kitchen whenever something like this, that's this labor intensive, comes together. And so, you know, he was trying to recreate the busyness of the kitchen and the ingredients that go into the dish. And then we have Victoria's cutting board, and this was a process. Victoria was experimenting with all different materials. It was really interesting to see her process. And she ended up collaborating with her brother, who is a woodworker. And so I'm going to read what she says. At one point, my brother Phil told me that he has never had a talent for making art like I do, but I strongly disagree. He makes so many beautiful art pieces every weekend in his garage, turned makeshift wood shop, whether it be a simple cutting board or a gigantic chicken pen. I decided to make a cutting board for this exhibition and enlist Phil's help in the process, because without the art he makes, this cutting board wouldn't be here. Just like without Phil, I wouldn't be where I am now. And so, you know, like I said, it was really interesting to see the process. She had to travel to go see her brother to do this. And, you know, he worked with her to pick out what woods they were going to use and everything, how they were going to hang it. And so part of what I loved about this project was seeing this process. And this is something that last time that Yumi and I did a complete project, the students worked with the artworks artists to plan works of art and create wall labels that shared their stories of grief. But it wasn't something that the students were also creating art as part of that project. And so one thing that we heard from the students afterwards was that they wanted to be a part of the exhibition in that way. And so that was kind of the motivating factor for continuing this and you know, making sure that they had a chance to create art too.
So I was just gonna go to the, can I go back just a one
Sure.
second for the Anne's piece that you didn't highlight for Anne Meacham's piece, that she was with the Marissa's class, that, you know, the feeling of food and comfort. So during the COVID time, Anne often barbecued with her parents, and whenever you hear about her menu on the weekends, like you want to go to her home. It's delicious, you know, meat, fish, vegetables, and variety of food, and always nice treat. So that's her burger. But you see the cheese and burgers and lettuce piece and tomatoes. If you open up this felted art, you see all those details inside. And then also for her, the pineapple is the key to make her burger perfect. So she has a piece of pineapple slice in there. So that's Anne's piece. Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, so meeting virtually, as much as we enjoyed, we have, some difficulty as well. So we wanted to just check and see what could be the virtual pros and cons. So meeting virtually, students expressed that they perhaps forced the student into take charge of the facilitating conversation for the group, which is actually, it's really positive. Sometimes you are so hesitant, you may not speak out until the end of the discussion, or if you are in the classroom, you may be a small quieter side, and facilitating students or staff member may talk more. But students felt that they needed to contribute and carry on this role as a group, so which is actually fantastic to hear. But they also disappointed that they didn't have time to make art together in the same space and same time. So that would be perhaps nicer to have that opportunity in the future, because they missed out because of the COVID. But I need to say, Adriel always came to the Zoom a few minutes earlier. So he's not gonna miss our conversation. So he chit-chatted with our artists quite a bit. So some students kind of got a way of, making the extra time to talk to. So this is the last part. Virtual meeting limited additional opportunity of group interactions outside of the meeting time. So that applies to the students, as well as the students and artists with the disability as well. So that is some reflection that we should consider and moving forward. But overall, I think with limited circumstances, they have done a fantastic job and they enjoyed each other.
And we were in these spaces a lot. And so I think for me, asking students even to meet this way outside of class and groups, it was challenging because, we wanted them to have non-digital experiences. But it was a good opportunity to learn about how to engage students in this way. I think all of my students were getting tired of me, requesting that they make jam boards, which is like a collage digital program that they could use to work together and things like that. So we got creative, but they definitely didn't get that physical experience. And so this project was really designed to build this connection, gain experiences through collaboration with a community partnership. We really found, I think, that the role of food worked well here in building communication and just sharing experiences. It was something that could be a connector that people really could share easily, share in their experiences easily. As someone who comes from a big Italian family and my grandparents owned a restaurant, I think it naturally, to me, it was like, of course we would use food for this. And this project really was built on this idea of experimentation and play in terms of, how we thought the project was going to go. I think for us being flexible, I think we even added a session to the end of our plan, changing deadlines. I was experimenting with grocery delivery. There was a lot of just unknowns going into it. And so, it required us being flexible, but also asking the artists and the students to be flexible as well, and, kind of roll with it. And so, we knew that was going to be the case going in, but we didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. And so in this way, I think the University of Arizona Museum of Art, besides being so generous and doing this, this experiment with us, really still, even online, served as a wonderful site for really a laboratory for a place where we could try out these ideas.
And also repeated experience for us as our artworks artists. So they felt comfortable being a partner, right? And Joey, without none of his peers, he wanted to join this talk and wanted to talk, which many of our artists would do. So they felt very comfortable and confident in doing so. So that is build up kind of confidence in them that able to carry through this mutual kind of collaboration together. So I'm very excited and thrilled. And I see the growth as an artist, our community partners in their part as well. So it's a very exciting project, and we cannot wait to see the show.
And so we have, I think, a little bit of time for questions. Marissa, can you join us too? Stop sharing my screen.
Chelsea's having some technical difficulties, so I'm here to help you field any questions. Thank you all for sharing all of that. It's such an exciting collaboration. It's also making me hungry. All the awesome
I'm gonna have to
artwork.
make veggie burgers.
There's, it's just such another, once again, another really meaningful topic. So it's really great to hear from you all about all the connections you made. And everyone who's here today, feel free to add more questions in the chat if you have questions for our speakers. Yeah. I was curious, a simple question is, what's next for your collaboration? And you have, I guess, in kind of the virtual, is that continuing to inform what you're doing? And yeah.
So collaboration wise, I think the show itself is a fantastic collaboration to see how we're going to facilitate the community interaction with the students and artists from artworks. I cannot wait to see how they do for the opening and ongoing show. And otherwise, the virtual format that we're creating a new format because artworks went through so much virtual instructions and connecting with the people. So we're creating a new format, including movement, music, and art to how we can really connect with our peers for different populations. So that is, we never thought of that would work. But then if you are limited, that can be a fun place to be. So we are excited about that. Yeah.
I'm excited about the exhibition. The students and the artists created a recipe exchange, so we're figuring that out for the galleries as a participatory part of it. And I don't know, just community day and just seeing what that looks like. I think it's going to be really great. I see a question from Lauren too. How many total works of art were created in the project? And that they'll all be on view. Yes, I had a few students who were unable to get me their works of art, and so I most of my classes, yeah, almost all of them.
Yeah, so you had 13 and we have 16, so
Yeah.
29, close to 29.
And yes, these will be, all of these artworks and all of the stories, written text as well on the labels will be included. They'll be on view in our mezzanine gallery or our community exhibition space if you've been here before. And I see a question about virtually. Yes, we hope to be adding virtual aspects of it online and continuing to do our 360 scanning of the galleries, but also having lots of info online for those of us that can't visit in person quite yet. Yeah, we're really excited and hope we can stay safe and still get together safely on Community Day. It is really wonderful. It was great to hear from Joey, and it's amazing. And you as well, Marissa. It's great to hear from artists, especially.
Yeah, we are already start making the recipe for exchange for the community day and throughout the gallery show. So if we can visit, please visit us so we can exchange. You can really have the artist handmade art in this size, so you can take that home. So
And then you can leave one too, and we're hoping to have a virtual version of it as well.
I'm curious, Chelsea sends a question as well. She's curious if you have advice for art museums that or arts-based organizations that might help make a collaboration like this successful to really have such a meaningful, like a more in-depth exchange. Tips.
I think from my end, it takes time. you know, I never want to ask too much of Yumi's time and the artist's time and my students, and so I'm just never sure, and so a lot of times I think I go into these collaborations with either a big idea or a very minimal idea because I just don't know what it's going to look like, and so it's something that I want to build together. I don't want to come in with any assumptions or anything kind of preformed. That gets trickier with the class because I have to have some of it set up in advance or it's not going to get anywhere during the semester. And so while I try to keep it as open as possible, you know, we knew we were doing food. I had applied for that small grant already. We talked to you all at UAMA. You know, I talked to Yumi and I had been working on it. I don't know, Yumi, do you?
Yeah, but yeah, I really appreciate her course because the base content of the course is hosting the community exhibition in the museum space. So having that mindset really opens up the space for listening, right? So that part is beautiful, how students can manage their conversation by listening and sharing and understanding and interested in hearing about other stories from, you know, members. So I think that base set the kind of atmosphere for ability to collaborate, and open-ended is okay because people can bring the ideas and that can form the form as the group goes. And what do you think about that, Marissa?
And I was going to ask Marissa too.
Yeah, so from what I've been gathering as like I get further into like art education and museum studies, they tend to want things to be open-ended because like with art you want multiple entryways and exits, so having a more open idea plan like we had for this last semester is actually really helpful because I didn't feel like we were constrained by any specific limits. So in our groups we were able to explore a lot of different routes, which was really, really helpful in the end.
Yeah, and I mean, this semester I said it to my class, like, I know I'm being frustratingly open right now and not giving a lot of parameters, but like, to me, that's where the interesting ideas come from, is, you know, having the purpose and having, you know, what we can do in place, but then seeing what can come of it. Because I think when people are working together, they're building new ideas together too.
I need to acknowledge I have a fantastic staff team. So they are very good at letting our people talk and then also give a good question to the students so the conversation can happen. So I think that facilitating skill is really important, that, you know, give a good question, but give a pause so they can process an answer. So that is really important in the group setting with the multiple group.
Yeah, I think what everyone has said about giving space and time is so important. And from like the museum side, if we're figuring out how can we have collaborations like this, it really is an investment in like building these relationships. This will be the third exhibit with artworks like Chelsea mentioned, and the second exhibit with Carissa students and collaborating with artworks. So it's really taken the time to like develop our relationship and be able to trust each other and learn from each other. So we can't, we're happy to let you all experiment and know that we can say we have the gallery space for you and we know it'll be great.
And I do think that's why, I mean, the community gallery is just such a wonderful space because those types of projects can happen. And I just appreciate it so much.
Yeah, I think it's been valuable too to connect with both of you, kind of artworks before my time at the museum, but I know, artworks artists have often come to visit, just to drop in, to talk about art, and the same with students and classes. Like sometimes those relationships just start with a class visit and you start to kind of figure out how to work together and what you can do together. So starting small is sometimes hard. Sometimes you just want to be like, we're doing a community exhibition and poof, it exists. So, but that's rarely the case.
Yeah, I like the small, sincere relationship. That's really important, like you said.
Well, it is 6:01. And so I want to respect everyone's time. And like we said, we're probably all getting really hungry. But I really appreciate everyone who joined us today, and especially to our panelists, Carissa and Yumi and Marissa and Joey. We really appreciate you sharing about this artwork, and we are very excited to have it up at the museum in just a little over a month. And it will be on view from that time, from October through into December. So you have a little bit of time to see it once it opens. But yes, please, please reach out to the presenters if you have questions or want to learn more about all the great work they're doing. And thank you for being here, and we hope we'll see all of you at future talks and programs. We're excited to kick off a great year together.
Thank you. Thank you, Willa. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Yumi. Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thanks, everybody.